now you've thrown your hat into the ring for Senate.
I'm in.
You're in. How many so far? I was going to pull up all the names. I was like, I don't know if I want to look now. Wait till after the primaries. But how many?
Nine candidates.
9 candidates. Less than I thought actually it was going to be.
Yes, it's and I would say if we're honest, 4 or 5 of those are serious candidates that seem to be really leaning into running, and there's some they may show up, but so far haven't really shown up.
Yeah. So caucus for the Senate seat happens in June.
The primary is in June 25th.
Uh-huh.
The caucus is in April.
Okay.
And the convention actually is in April. And the caucus comes first. They select the delegates. Then they go to the convention in April, and then the primary in June. Okay.
So April's really like you're racing to April based off our system, or maybe help people understand how it works.
So yeah, it is a little confusing. In the convention, if you can get 40 plus 1, you end up on the ballot in June. You can also get there by state law by gathering signatures.
Okay.
So several of us will do both paths. We'll go to the convention and try to win there, but we'll also gather signatures. And I'm gathering signatures, which if I'm successful at that, will put me on the ballot in June.
Okay. So it could be that in June we have 3 Republicans
I would
running?
be surprised if we didn't have 4.
Okay.
You could conceivably have more. I know 3 of the candidates at least 3 have said they're going to gather signatures. Now, just saying it doesn't mean they'll actually do it.
Yeah. But how many signatures do you have to get?
It's 28,000 signatures.
Wow, 28,000.
And I've tried to do it before with volunteers. It's near impossible. So most of us will use outside firms that help gather them. So we do some with volunteers and some with a firm.
How do you feel about that? Like thinking back, because it hasn't always been this way.
It hasn't. So I will tell you, we could have a whole show, right?
I know
on this topic. But I will tell you that history has proven that some candidates who the general Republican Party would select cannot make it through convention. And that's why they've put the signature path in. Is the delegates always wanted to and do feel like they can vet the candidates and then present them to the general public. And the general public has kind of pushed back and said, well, wait a minute, you don't always pick the same people that we want to vote on.
Yeah.
And so thus you have the signature path.
Well, so like my parents, they were, basically lifelong Republicans.
Right.
But they were in Southern California. Our whole family, not the whole family, but my parents and I, we moved here in about 2015. And so they just didn't quite understand how the Utah system worked versus how the California system worked, right?
Right.
So just kind of trying to understand these different processes and how it goes about. She's like, well, how do I find out my delegates? I was like, it's a challenge. It's a challenge. You have to go be involved in the party. You really have to be active in the party if you want to have influence over a delegate who then at caucus will vote for that person.
You're exactly right. If you don't go to those caucus meetings, you can't, that's how you get selected as a delegate, or you vote for a delegate that represents you.
Right.
So if you're not going to those, that's where most of your influence is.
Yeah. So I can see how the signatures, it just on its surface or on its face, like 28,000 signatures, and you're like, I can't do it on my own. I have to go to this service to do it. And I've heard this dozens of times. RFK, I know, running as an independent, he's literally having to gather millions of signatures across the country just to get on the ballot.
It's a high bar.
It's a high bar. It's a really high bar. So, and it's an expensive bar.
It's expensive. It weeds out candidates with resources and without, which I think is unfortunate.
Yeah.
People. I wish there was a path that wasn't based on resources.
Yeah.
I think that would be better.
Yeah. Well, we're a big country too. So we're a big state. There's a lot of miles between the top to the bottom. And I guess it's not for the faint of heart. Politics and government is not for the faint of heart. You got to be committed to do it.
Well, those who watched me make a decision about this will know that it's a big decision.
Yeah.
Right? Like you're not just signing up for a little league sports team here. This is a big deal.
It isn't. And I think we could probably talk a little bit about that, just that decision, because I know it seemed like you were in and then you were out and then you were in.
Yep.
But there's just this scramble, right? It's almost like somebody hikes the ball, and it's like you have to. Everybody's looking for, hey, can I count on your support? Can I get your?
Yeah, and everybody's trying to get a jump on the snap.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
And,
I saw Trent Skaggs.
Yes,
Skaggs or Stags? I keep messing.
Stags with the T.
Stags. I saw a sign up for him. It said Stags for Senate back in like early 23.
I think Trent was one of the first ones in.
And I was like, I don't even know who this guy is. And I didn't even, there's not even a Senate race. Who is this guy?
Yeah.
So, but he was like a year ahead of time.
He was early in, and he had decided he was going to run no matter whether or not Mitt ran or not. And,
right.
And others were waiting to see.
Yeah.
And I was off in La La Land being a member of Congress, enjoying that.
You're like, I'm running the Republican Climate Caucus, right? You're like, I'm the brain. That's my focus.
Which we ought to talk about because that's kind of a big thing.
Yeah, I think it's a big thing too. I know I listened to you talk a little bit about it as an independent, a lifelong independent for me. I'm a Republican in name only. You can call me a rhino. Not in name only, but I am a Republican, but normally I'm an independent. But coming to Utah, independents can't vote in primaries for the Republican Party. So you're kind of like, well, I don't want to be on the sidelines. I don't want to just be watching the game.
Sure.
You got to get into the game. So, I can see a lot of these different sides. So Republicans for climate change, it doesn't hit me the way that some Republicans are like, you say climate change and it's just
the word climate. And I'll give you a good analogy.
Maybe Jeff's that way. Jeff, does it give you goosebumps when you hear somebody say climate change, Jeff?
Well, it's changed so much. I mean, it used to be it's not climate change anymore, right? It was like climate chaos. And then, crisis but on its face,
the inconvenient truth. Jeff, it's an inconvenient truth. I know it's inconvenient for you, but the oceans are going to flood and thousands of people are going to be.
We're all supposed to be dead right now.
We're all supposed to be gone. Yeah.
So and this dialogue is showing you exactly why Republicans don't like to talk about it. There's this extremism associated with it that turns Republicans off. Mm-hmm. And so as a general rule, their chest tightens up and they become very, very defensive because they know the next thing that's coming is, we want you to give up your car, your gas stove, your beef. You have to do all of these things. And Republicans are just going, it's so fast, right? I don't buy that.
Yeah, there's this slippery slope that happens, right? And then because you can anticipate, it's like, well, you did this, so what's keeping you from doing this, and this? And then we paint this picture of what the roadmap's going to look like, the inevitable roadmap, and we're convinced that that's the truth, where it's somewhere in between. It's never as bad as we think.
Yeah,
but it's never
I think that's fair. And I think what many Republicans, they see that like slippery slope and say, the problem with me putting my little toe there is you're going to ask me to go down that slide, right? The next thing. And the way I've come at this is I truly believe Utahns / conservatives care deeply about the earth. And I was troubled by the branding that we somehow didn't. And that branding comes because we don't like the extremism. We don't want to talk climate. And yet my aha moment was like, we're actually really good at this. We're the original environmentalists.
Yeah.
Now, Republicans don't like that word, but we've always cared deeply about the earth. And we, too, want to leave it better than we found it. And the real truth is there are Republican solutions that don't feel like that slippery slope, that keep energy independence, that keep prices low and affordable, that don't demonize our fossil fuel industry. And Republicans aren't talking about them, so they're not on the table as options.
Yeah. They're getting left out of the decision making because they're taking a stronger stance than
they're not. So we just stand back and say what we don't like.
Right.
What I'm trying to get us to do is stand up and say, but here's what we like. And oh, by the way, it reduces more emissions than your plan.
Yeah. Like let's have the actual debate as to what when put into practice, when the actual doing, the rubber meets the road, what is actually going to accomplish things and what's not, what's going to take us away or lead us down a wild goose chase that we look back and we're like, whoa, that was a mistake.
And I'll tell you, if you want to see that, look at Europe. So Europe started down this path, and they were told to
Germany specifically.
Germany is a really good example. And so, and I was in Belgium, and Belgium had 7 nuclear plants. Environmentalists said they're bad, shut them down. So they shut them down. It was providing half of their energy with 0 emissions. They replaced that with Russian petroleum products that are very, very dirty.
Yeah,
if you talk about dirty, I mean these are really dirty, and it's now their enemy.
So as somebody looking out, so I can't help but think, oh, there's some conspiracy. That's what they wanted the whole time. Like like nowadays, it's so funny how my mind goes to that.
No, there is hardcore evidence that Russia was actually involved in the propaganda movement against fossil fuels to get United States to shut them down. So now we buy them from Russia. And I'll give you, here's another good example.
China's doing the same thing?
So 15 years ago, Europe produced as much natural gas as Russia. Europe's said fracking is bad. Part of that came from Russian involvement. Information that fracking was bad. So they stopped fracking. Today they buy fracked natural gas from Russia.
That's crazy.
An enemy, right?
Yeah.
And my worry is the same.
And they're forced to.
They're forced to. The United States is on that same trajectory. We're going to shut down nuclear. We're going to shut down fracking. All of a sudden we wake up and we're buying dirty fossil fuels from an enemy. And the reality of it is we can do it. We can have it all. We can have our fossil fuels. We can reduce emissions, but we have to be smart about it. And Republicans have to start talking about it.